Gabrielle Brooks. I am the Communications and Development Manager here at Urban Art Commission. I thank you for coming, appreciate you for sharing your time with us today. This is part 3 of our workshop series, our 5-part workshop series for artist development, for helping people understand our application process a little more thoroughly, and just for generally networking and getting to know you guys. With that, I will let Tony introduce himself, and then we will get started.
Hey everybody, I'm Tony Hawkins. I am a UAC artist, a public artist, and I'm also a full-time artist. So my business on a day-to-day basis is doing art installations for the city, for the school district. I do a lot of work for the school district. I'm a vendor for them. And also commercial build-outs for people who want to who want to open up a new space, be it restaurants or whatever it may be.
So we are Urban Art Commission. This is our lovely team. We are a small but mighty team of 6 people. We have 3 program managers, Kayla, who is with us today and driving our PowerPoint presentation, and then Travis, who you might see in a little bit. He ran to run a public art errand, and he will be right back. And then we have Richard Eccles. Our executive director, Lauren Kennedy, actually just made a recent announcement. I'm not sure if you saw, but she will be leaving UAC this September after almost 8 years here, being our fearless leader. And so we are both sad and excited to see what she has next on the horizon, which is, we already know, it's an art gallery named Sheet Cake. And so we hope that you guys are able to check that out later. We've been around for 25 years. We actually celebrated our 25th anniversary last year at Wiseacre. So if you remember that, it was a really big, fun party full of a lot of people, including one of the first artists who ever did a project with UAC. She actually was in attendance, so I got to meet her, and that was really, really special. You might have seen some of these projects around town before, maybe recognize something, but we have over 130 projects across the city. So we've been around for a while. We are funded through the city's Percent for Art program. So as budgets are allocated yearly for construction, maintenance, or just general growth in the city, there's a percentage that UAC receives to be able to incorporate public art along with that growth, so that there is art with the growth and development of the community integral to that part of our mission. So, and there is our mission: to create opportunities for artists and neighborhoods to connect and shape spaces through public art, which means that we are kind of a middleman service to help the artists and the community get exactly what they want when it comes to creating public artworks that tell the story of their community. And our vision, UAC aspires for art to be integral to a thriving and equitable Memphis. As I said before, we believe that art is in everything anyway, and so as things grow, we hope that art is there hand in hand along the entire route. And so that brings us to our recap for session 2. I see a lot of new faces from the last workshop, and so I just wanted to go over what we covered in session 2 because it's very relevant for the 2 artist calls that we have open right now. We actually didn't have any calls to artists open during that workshop. They came out like the week after that. And so, yeah, just to refresh you guys, if you were here last week or last month or a month and a half ago, thank you for joining us. But yeah, so we can get into that. So yeah, we covered resume, which if you didn't know, a resume is a formal document that explains basically all of your qualifications, everything that you've done. You're pretty much gonna put your life story within your resume, telling about the things that you've done, things that you have been a part of, even if it was a project that you didn't lead directly, if you were an assistant on that project, if you had something to do with it and you think it's relevant, put it in there.
So when we're talking about what we did on the last workshop, just know that everything that we talked about was very specific to this this room. You know, like your resume, if you're going in to get a job at Macy's, wouldn't be the same resume you'd have in this space. And so it was super specific to what we're doing here. So if you want more information about it, anybody at UAC can kind of go over that stuff with you guys on an individual basis, and we can give you the slides from last time too.
Yeah, and of course we will have a recording from that session as well. But yeah, that's great to note that your resume, your portfolio, your cover letter, the things that you have probably had to submit to many an application throughout your lifetime, they will just be tailored to this specific endeavor, situation. So if you are applying to a call, and the call, for example, mentions that the community is looking for people to showcase trees, and you've got experience with trees and you love trees, tell about that. Tell a story about your love of trees within your resume, your cover letter, your portfolio. Maybe not relevant to talk about how you used to be a tree cutter at one point. You wouldn't want to put something in there that, takes away from your best foot forward in this process. And so a curriculum vitae, we wanted to showcase the difference between the resume and the CV. So at UAC, there's no preference. So it's either one, whatever you feel most comfortable with. I think the way that we've seen things, a CV tends to be from an artist who feels like they've done a lot. There's a lot to be recorded, there's a lot to be highlighted, and so they tend to be long, they're multiple pages. A resume tends to be 1 to 2 pages at max, and doesn't necessarily list every single thing. On a CV, you're listing your gallery experience, your education, your past projects, just if you've been to a residency program before, you're putting that on there. Yeah, so just your entire career of an artist. Next, we covered portfolio, which I'm really excited to share that thanks to generous support from Arts Memphis, we are able to host a very special, the 5th session of this series will be very special. Now we are able to do a portfolio critique and a photography session of your work. So people will be able to come with their existing work, bring pieces in to have them professionally, highly well done photography so that you can update your portfolios. But we talked mainly about the importance of having very clear, concise images within your portfolio, making sure that the work that's included is relevant to the call itself. So if, for example, our current call for Jesse Turner Park is a sculpture call. So if you've done sculpture before, then you'd want to include images of your sculptural work that's clear and concise. You'd want to maybe, if you've done more studio practice work, then you've actually done tangible sculptural works, then you'll want to tell about that in your cover letter and maybe even put that in your resume in a way, and then be able to showcase your images. I think we talked about matching your images to what you've referenced in your CV or your resume. So if you've got a project that you've completed in 2005 and you had a final image of that, you can go ahead and number it on there and say, here are 5 images. This image goes or corresponds with this description on my cover letter. This goes with this reference on my resume, etc.
This information, even though it's not the most exciting, is pertinent to if you're trying to get one of these projects. It's super important. And I think the main thing is just being able to tell a story. I think one of the things we talked about last time in our last workshop was I showcased some of the work that I did on another call that was out of state. And every single thing that I did for that call corresponded to the overall feel and breadth of the work. So it was a community-based call. So making sure that the things on my resume were community-based. The cover letter was community-based. What I chose for my portfolio was community-based. And it all made sense. And so you just want to be thoughtful as to how you're packaging yourself and marketing yourself. And so that's kind of some of the things we're talking about. So yeah, you're good.
Yeah, We ask for 10 to 20 images, but again, if you don't have 10 to 20 strong images, do not force it. It's okay. Like, don't try to put in those blurry images that you can kind of squint and make
Right,
it out
from your
like
first iPhone.
Yeah, leave those
I did that.
behind. It's okay. Yeah, you had that happen with you, right?
I did that, and I didn't get the call, and I asked what happened, as if like something had to have happened. And and the person that was working at UAC at the time, she's like, honestly, Tony, I know your work is good, but these pictures were horrible, and it does not show your work in the best light. So you really need to work on that. And sometimes us as artists, we're not really thinking about that side of it because we have been seeing it so much. We know what it is, but you have to think about somebody else who doesn't know what it looks like. Also, we talked about groups, and I want to make this a point too. A lot of UAC projects or open calls will say you can apply as a group. And so I am currently on a project that I am a part of the selection committee for, and we had several groups that applied for it. And I saw two different things. The right way is if you're showcasing your portfolio. And say me and Gabrielle were both working together in this project, and we want to apply for something. Listing those images, showing those images in your portfolio, but telling very clearly whose work was whose, or whose work was whose. And so make sure that you're doing that if you are applying to something as a group with someone else. Make sure that you're very clear when you're showing your portfolio who's doing what work, because if you don't, we're not clear as to what the contribution is, or what the perspective is, and kind of how you're working together. Okay.
That's a great point. So here's just an example of someone who has applied to a call before and done a great job of including their images in their portfolio. So this was a very clear image. Shout out to Jared Small, who has worked with us before in many capacities, but more recently with the Renaissance Convention Center, doing his first public art piece, large-scale public art piece within that facility. And so these were images that he included with sizing details, with description of the work, and also just that little piece right there that says include quality photos with descriptions of each image, right? And he made sure to describe each one of his images in his application with detail for scale reference. So he would put a picture like this, and then he would include, if he had an example of it hanging in a gallery or something, he'd include an image of that too for scale. Because again, something that we mentioned last time was that these calls, as much as you guys know us and know the UAC team, the committee itself is not made up of the UAC team. So we do not make any decisions. We do not vote. We do not have a vote. Like, yes, we can, talk sweetly to people and put in, our bid for who we want to do something sometimes, but we do not make any final decisions. It's a selection committee process. And so the selection committee is made up of many different types of people, and not all of them are fine artists. Some are community members. We have, our selection committee is actually made up of community members, stakeholders in that project. So if it was a new build on a community center or something, it could be a project manager from that project, or a contractor, an architect, somebody like that, as well as two artists from previous projects that have worked with UAC or people like that. So someone who looks at 72 by 96 may have no idea how that is, or what scale that is, and may determine that, oh, you haven't done a project as large as the wall that I'm looking for, so I don't think your portfolio is there. And they just had no idea that is pretty big, and it is a good representation of what's possible. So I think including some scale reference in your portfolio is also great if you have not done a mural outside before, or a large scale project.
Yeah, and I think one thing that we said about Jared Small when we got to this part of the workshop last time, we talked about, being able to take some of your pieces and showcase how they can be transitioned into something that you're trying to do. So, for instance, if you're not a muralist, if you've never done a mural, but you want to get into doing murals, or you can do a mural because you're a painter, then let's Photoshop this. And of course you want to be clear that it's Photoshop, but let's put this painting on the side of a building just so you can see from a design standpoint what it would look like as a mural. So don't feel like you have to have all the experience in the world very, directly to what they're asking for. There's ways around it just to showcase yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
So that, again, is the image with the scale kind of showing you.
Looks like a mural.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty large. So, yeah. And here's another mural from artist Tony Hawkins, who completed this project with us last year. Was that 2022?
Yeah.
Yeah, time is flying. Yes, so 2022, Tony was commissioned to do this piece for the Whitehaven Community Center. And then this first image is from a piece that he's working on in Westwood, actually a very large scale mural that you'll see a little bit more of when we get into our session information today. And these are just more images from Tony Hawkins' portfolio.
Yeah, so number 3, I want to just bring this up. So number 3, this is another way that you can showcase your design ability. Again, this was a community-based call. Number 3 was a design. I had an opportunity to work for YMCA doing a design for one of their new builds for one of their buildings. And so they wanted me to, showcase what I could do if I was to do a mural on the front of it. So if you have some design work, maybe you've designed a mural, but you haven't done it, you can put that in there because it's still your portfolio. It's your ability to show your design ability. How can you take the side of a building and make it look good? So that's what number 3 was. Number 4 was just actual work that I've done.
Yeah, 4 was special though because you did those tigers as cutouts, right?
Yeah. So number 4, what was cool about number 4, and this is just again just kind of like y'all trying to think outside the box. So these tigers that are on this wall in number 4, and I know it's kind of hard to see because we have the light coming in. Maybe we can try to make it a little bit darker. It's like it got brighter all of a sudden. But yeah, it's weird. But the tigers that are on this wall, they were all cut out from wood and hand painted and then mounted on the brick. So it's not a traditional mural, it's more of an art installation. But if you're able to showcase work that you've done that's not necessarily your traditional mural, but it still showcases your ability to design a wall space, just include it. It's good. It'll make sense to them.
I think this is relevant too, and I'm gonna make a future statement that will be relevant later. This is a great example of how you as an artist can think outside the box to pitch ideas to other people. So if outside of UAC's calls and other organizations like UAC who put out calls to artists, you as an artist are a business, are an entrepreneur who has the ability to sell themselves to people if they want to, if you choose to do so. And so this would be a great example of coming to a business, an organization, and them not having a budget that allowed for you to do full wall coverage. So you could get very creative and have vinyl application, doing what Tony did of cutouts, just showcasing that you can think for them and tailor your designs, your thoughts to what they would like to see and give them some options there. So again, you can cultivate your own projects as well if you have that thought process and that wanting to do something like that. But that would be a great example of that. And so that brings us to our letter of interest. Last time we covered this very in depth. This will be quick, but your letter of interest is basically your opportunity to sell your why with the application, to tell your story, why you're tied to this thing, why you want to do this, because something that I really reiterated multiple times in the last call or in the last session was that public art is a very long process. It can be tedious. It can take much longer than you think. You can set a timeline and then set another timeline and scrap that one. So, and anything can happen, including a pandemic. We've had a project that experienced a sinkhole and we're still dealing with some of that. And things work out. We have a wonderful team of people around us, and and so many partners and so many organizations in this city who work to help alleviate any situations that happen, but life happens. And so you want to make sure that a project that you are interested in is something that you are truly interested in, a community that you want to see thrive or have a tie to is important because, again, it can take a long time. So something that you might think is a 2-year run could turn into a 5-year thing. And if you weren't invested from the front end, probably won't be invested by the time it's 5 years. And so budgets change, prices fluctuate. So if concrete is like $2 a square foot, pound, I don't know how they do that. Now it might be $5 in a year, and you'll have to go back to the drawing board on your budget, and all of that is expected. Of course, we're there to hold your hand and be there with you, but all of that is expected for you to have to contend with and be flexible about. So
and in fact, can I add to that too?
Yeah.
I'll say this too. So, and it's really helped me being a part of a selection committee because it's helped me to kind of see things from a community standpoint and how they're thinking and when they're looking at these resumes and they're looking at different artists. So before they see your work, before they see any of that stuff, normally they're starting off with the resume and the cover letter. And so when they're looking at the cover letters, if they have Judah, if they have Judah here and Judah's like, oh yeah, I grew up in this neighborhood has fed me, this neighborhood saved my life, I still live in this neighborhood, my mom still lives in this neighborhood, I'm all about this neighborhood. And then I have Gabrielle and she's like, I just moved to Memphis and I'm just looking for an opportunity. Like, it's just not to say that one's wrong, but you have to think about what is your why. And do you even have a why? Because honestly, if you don't have a why, it's going to show. So you really have to sit down and ask yourself, what's my real reason for doing this particular project? Now, if you're being honest with yourself, your why may simply be that I want to get my work out there and I need to feed my family. And if that's the case, that's cool too, but just think about, do you have a why and can you make it work? So for me, I'll give you all my example. So I've decided that I have become and branded myself as an urban storyteller. So that's the way I brand myself. I'm an urban storyteller. So I enjoy telling marginalized communities their story. I enjoy sharing perspectives that are not necessarily seen in common spaces. And so that's my why. So I can take that and run with it with anything. And so just think about like kind of what your why can be if you don't have one. All right. Yeah.
this was a pretty short slide because I think we put a lot of this information into that.
But I will say this though about this. Please, and Travis, hey, raise your hand, Travis.
Travis is another program.
He was on he was on the slides. He works here as well. So Travis he'll give you a little nod. Y'all please make sure that if you are applying for multiple projects, that you pay attention to what project you are applying for at that time. Please do not say, I'm applying for the Orange Mound mural project, blah, 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 and it's actually the
Jesse Turner Park.
The Jesse Turner Park project. We see that all the time, and it is an immediate turnoff, and it's very hard to recover from it. We see it all the time. And I get how it happens, because if you're applying for multiple projects, you're copying and pasting, you're not paying attention. Research the project. Speak to what a good thing about the projects that UAC does. They tell the history of the neighborhood and what the ask is. They're very clear about what the ask is. So try to insert, what they're saying back into your cover letter. But please just pay attention, because we see it a lot. You'd be surprised. Y'all be like, wow. We see it all the time.
And it is very easy to do, especially if you've waited to the last minute, it's 11:45, and it's going to close soon, and stuff is loading slow, so you're just trying to impress that button.
Because artists are procrastinators.
Yes, me too. I get it. So and there's a lot of great information in the Considering the Opportunity call sheet that's in your folders. But researching the area, researching the community, the neighborhood that is a part of the call, associated with the call. If it's a private project and it's an organization, just getting to know them, their mission statement, it just makes you seem more informed and like you care. Hopefully you do care enough that you would want to know that stuff. But for example, again, going back to the Jesse Turner Park call that's open right now, it's an open sculpture call to artists. That is it's in the South Memphis community of, it's in South Memphis. And so if I had done more research, I would know that Jesse Turner Park also is the home of the Tri-State Defenders, who is a youth baseball team that's been there for generations and is named after the first Black chairman of the Shelby County Board of Commissioners. Okay, so Kayla is the program manager, so Kayla knows. And if you are interested in that, please talk to her. I'll say that again too. But doing that research, being able to tell that story or meet people there with their story as they're about to explain it to you and be like, oh, it's just a good impression. I think we're good on that one. And so this is what our website looks like right now with the 2 open calls to artists. If you went to uacmem.org and looked at the little 2 lines that are right there, and it'll give you a menu and it'll say call to artists. And so this will be what you'll see. We have the movable collection call to artists that's open right now. That is a great introductory call to artists if you have not applied to anything with UAC, because it is simply just a purchasing of your existing work. If you wanted to make new work in the time frame before the call closes, August 23rd, then you could do that too. But again, if you have existing works, a well-photographed, well-put-together portfolio, a little letter of interest, and bam, you could have your work purchased for real money and included in the city of Memphis's art collection.
Can I say something about that one?
Yeah.
I have to say this is going to bother me if I don't. Now, we had the same type of situation, and I know you remember because you were at our last workshop. We had the same situation at our last workshop. We had an open call. The open call was for, y'all help me. But there was one, no. There was one in particular that was it was low-hanging fruit. It was a very easy call. And we told everybody in the room, apply for this project because it's not a long project. It's super easy, super quick. If you're applying for one project, there's no reason why you shouldn't apply for this one. I don't think hardly any of the people in the room applied for it. And it was just such an easy project. So I'm going to tell you, if you took the time out to come here today, clearly you want to get your artwork out there. Clearly you're monetizing your work. There's really no reason why you should not be applying for this open call. And I'm saying this because a lot of times with our open calls, we get a lot of the same people. I'm purposely not applying for works because I'm already in the middle of a work. I can easily still apply for it, but I want to see new artists. Like I was a new artist at one point, and I'm glad that we're seeing new people in the room, but there's no don't be scared. Don't be worried about it. Apply for it, and you may get it.
What kind of art are you looking for that?
Don't see you worry about the wrong thing. Well then send the one you like the most.
Yeah.
That's hard.
And
We'll just pick any one of them. Just apply.
Right. Yeah,
Get
you've
your
got
foot
time.
wet.
You've got time. You could host a little, game show with your friends and help me pick the
Have
best
them
one.
come and hey, pick your favorite piece of art. You were asking I have 250 paintings. How do I choose? Okay, so based off of what Travis just said, maybe you may want to look at something that's speaking towards your very unique perspective. If you have 250 pieces and this is open to everybody in the city, you have a million other artists. A simple abstract may work, but if you want to be more sure that you'll get in, maybe you have something that's unique to your style, your perspective. Or show a range, that could work too. Yeah.
Or you also get a chance to include a letter of interest in this. So that's your chance to kind of explain too about your work. Thinking from the context of where these works will live, you get a chance to kind of say, and it's nice to read, I think, for the selection committee, for us. It's nice to see when people bridge that gap kind of saying, okay, here's my work in the context of a community center. And I grew up in, let's say I grew up in Orange Mound Community Center. I would love to see my paintings here because they would inspire children as they grow. And I played basketball here all my life, and here's my work that represents kind of that thing or whatever. And you can, narrative. If you need to, we are here to help. So we can help you craft a narrative. If you're like, oh my God, I don't know, give me 3 words about you and we can help you craft a narrative. But again, that's up to what you're looking for. So that takes us to today's topics, which are our design concepts, timeline, materials, and budget. So yes, so let's start off with design concepts, and we'll take it from the top with Tony. This is an image that you'll see. This image is from his project proposal for the Westwood mural that he's working on right now.
Yeah, I'll say this is going to be hard to see, and because it's such a big mural. This is a over 500 foot long mural, and so it's kind of difficult to even see what's here. But that kind of speaks to the whole point of the design concept.
So design concept basically is the core idea driving the design of your work. So when you're coming up with your design concept, again, it's going to be your why to what you're creating. And it's going to be your plot, your narrative, all of that to what's going on in your piece. And so, again, what Tony said is relevant because this was a huge, huge wall, so he had to be creative with how he broke it down. And I only included 2 sections, but there are 8 sections I think you had in your proposal. I think so. And so each one of his sections was labeled and has a description. And if you want to go into what you did, how you...
Yeah, I want to say for when you're looking at design, so now we're getting into the meat and the potatoes of this workshop, which is about your design concept and kind of laying out. So this is like you've been selected as a finalist. Now you're asking for a specific rendering of what you would do in that site, right? And so for this site, it's very awkward canvas, right? So we have 2 walls. One wall is really short and really long. Another wall is short and very long, and it's just kind of awkward. And so I had to make use of the space. So thinking about your canvas, thinking about using as much of the space as you can. You don't want to not consider the shape of your space. You don't want to ignore it. You want to make it an asset. So for me, I did a lot of movement. So because it's already a long piece, I wanted to try to create that movement that already was there, especially knowing that it's by a street and people were driving by. I wanted to, do a lot of directional cues. And so that's kind of what I did there. Also, when you're trying to lay out your sections, one thing that Gabrielle said that I did, I blew up sections of the design as opposed to just giving them, one snapshot because it is very difficult to see. So if you're doing a larger piece, go ahead and zoom in on pieces of it and, showcase it. I'll also say this too. I use Procreate. I don't know what you guys use, if you're using Adobe Photoshop or whatever you're using, but I use Procreate. I Photoshop everything. If you're not currently Photoshopping things into spaces, start looking to do that. See, if you haven't taken a class, Apple does free classes on Procreate. I think they do free classes on Adobe. If you have a friend that you can call to show you, it changes the game when you're able to show your design in the actual space. So when I photoshopped it right onto the picture. That's what I was going to ask. Yeah. This is already done. No, this isn't already done. This is the design. And it makes your design look better when you can show it in the actual space versus here's a piece of notebook paper with a sketch on it. And this is about packaging yourself. And my perspective, again, is from, I do this for a living, so I'm always having to market myself to different people and different organizations. But you want to think like that because that's ultimately what you're doing is packaging yourself. So Photoshop is your friend. Labeling different things, don't be afraid to do that. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? So for me, this was a story. This is, again, that urban storyteller. Westwood, back in the day when I was young, they were really known for their band. Their marching band was really popular. And so I knew that would be nostalgic for that community. I knew that they would immediately know what I was talking about. So use what you know about the project and the people in your design. And certain organizations and communities will be more apt to want to tell a story versus having something pretty. If you have a community that maybe wants to inspire people in it, they may not respond as well for something that doesn't inspire. Just think about that type of stuff.
We've seen that a lot with communities and versus abstract art versus having portraits included in it. They would rather see portraits of people that they know and community members represented as opposed to something abstract.
Yeah, over here it's like this is a community leader, one of the pastors in the neighborhood. These are kids. This is the community center. So it's all very specific to that neighborhood.
So yeah, that brings us to materials. So again, when you're thinking about your design concept, you're probably gonna be thinking about the materials that you'll have to use to create your piece. And so materials are your resources used in the creation and study of visual arts. Such as paint, clay, cardboard, whatever it is. If you're a muralist, it's going to be paint. It's going to be maybe polytab material, which if you don't know what polytab is, it's kind of like like a canvas, like a thin canvas, like wallpaper,
Wallpaper for artists.
or like if you've
y'all know
sheet
what polytab
pasted
is?
before.
Yeah, so polytab is a technology where you can have a polytab fabricator to print out your mural for you. So you can design your mural on the computer or by hand, however you want to do it, and then you can send it off to them. They will print it to scale, and they can do it at whatever opacity you want it to. If you can do it, full color, or you want to do it just enough for you to have your guidelines, and then you can take that material and you can paste it onto a wall. I will say the UAC is not a big fan of polytab. UAC does have several murals that are polytab, like from one in particular that you probably have seen, the one that is at the Civil Rights Museum.
It just depends. It's just an option for when a wall can't get resurfaced, or if there's something weird about the wall. Sometimes polytop is an easier route to go to, and you can get it printed directly. So that's another. It's just depends on the cost of. Yeah, if you're not a muralist. But yeah, so your materials again are what you're going to use for creating your piece, and you want to think about how are you going to source your materials. Is something that you're thinking about using not readily available in your area? You're going to have to factor in shipping timelines on that. How are you going to get it? Are you open to working with new materials on this project as opposed to something else? Why? Like, what would you be pitching that for? Think about that in your thought process, and it can help in your narrative too, in your narrative creation. Researching the materials, and remembering that projections are materials. So if you had a projector and you're projecting something, that is a material, it's a thing, and you can write it in your budget, include it in your budget. And then identifying fabricators who could create what you need. So thinking through and not being afraid to dream a little bit bigger than what you've done before, bigger than something that you feel that, I can sculpt things, or I am a metal worker. Maybe that's not you, but a fabricator could be very handy and helpful to get your idea out and into the world. And you want to also think about materials from a space of what do things mean? Do they have a context? Is my my pitch to use bronze in this piece actually something that isn't great for the space itself because maybe it's prone to flooding and bronze corrodes easily, or whatever could be the case, or perhaps even that the significance of the material itself. Maybe you are using cotton in something versus acrylic, and acrylic maybe is representative of things that you don't want associated with that project versus using cotton, a clean source material, or something like that. So just thinking about all those things, there's a lot of different ways to think about your materials, what you're sourcing, and then thinking about them again from the standpoint of Is it economical? Is the thing I want to make we would all probably love to make a gold sculpture, right? I would love to get some gold, source some gold, but with a $48,000 budget, I probably will not have a 6-foot tall gold sculpture, right? So thinking about that, even if maybe I want to make the world's most tiny golden sculpture, that's my prerogative, but maybe not through public art. Community-based, the community may not want that. So thinking about these things will help, again, in writing your narrative, creating your story, in understanding, what it is that you're trying to convey with your piece and what your piece could convey to an area. Because if let's say you were creating something for a community that hates silver, and your whole pitch was around silver, it's probably not going to go over very well. So again, that's why the research is important. That's why all these things kind of flow and go hand in hand together. And this is just a list of materials that Tony put into his Westwood mural project proposal. So you can see everything from tape down to rollers, tarps, lifts. People forget to include that, but if you're doing something where it's high up, you're gonna need a scissor lift probably. And thinking about including that cost on the front end is better than having to factor it in on the back end. So, and sometimes, just a quick note, if you do get a project and you're working on it, sometimes things happen where you are able to, cross a line out of your budget, because if it's new construction happening, chances are there's a lift on that property that you could talk to the people and be like, please let me use your lift, and then, you can take that out of your budget. And so there's lots of things. I really encourage people to barter and trade in the artist community a lot too, just because there are people right here, right now, sitting in this room who can do things that you cannot. And so therefore, ask them, why not? The worst thing people can say is no, and then you can ask them why. So again, use your resources, use the people who are here in this room with you, because there is enough to go around. That's what I want to say too, again, here. There is enough to go around. There are enough opportunities, money, fame, fortune, gold, doubloons for everyone. So let's help each other to get to it.
So I'll say this to y'all. What you're doing right now is you're thinking as like an artist, and that's exactly what the organization, UAC, and also the community will want to see, is how are you thinking about this? If you are traditionally somebody who uses a projector to scale work and you can't do it, well, how are you going to do it? Now, we can't answer that right now because there are literally a million ways you can do that. That's you researching based off of what you have to work with. But that's a great point. You do want to research those things. Right now in Westwood, the mural that I'm doing, I'm projecting it up. I'm a projector muralist. I use projectors religiously. So for me, I have a generator on the back of my truck, and it's very, very questionable what I'm doing out there. I mean, because I'm out there at night with some cones and some lights, and yeah. And it's a very busy street, and those people are doing 90 down that street, and oh yeah, and I got an extension cord, and it's very weird. And I do have normally I'll have a police out there kind of looking out for me, but I chose to do it that way because that's what I'm used to, and I was okay with the risks that I had to take to do that, and I have some insurance. But you do need to think about that, and what you're comfortable with, and the neighborhood. How comfortable are you in the neighborhood? Are you really going to be out there at night, potentially by yourself with a projector? It's just, those are things you have to think about. I also want to say this about materials. You need to know that there's an oversight committee, and the oversight committee that exists, they overlook all the projects that funnel through UAC. Some of the people that are on that oversight committee are engineers, they are architects. And so sometimes they do ask questions about your materials. They're going to be more apt to maybe question your use of material. What can separate you from another artist may be the fact that you know which materials to use and can tell why versus someone else. So if you're out there using watercolors on a brick wall,
right.
For
sculpture, For sculpture, I think that's really important to
Very
know
much
as
so.
well,
Sculpture is
because,
definitely.
depending, just is it structurally sound?
Yes,
Your idea,
yes.
your thought. And if you're not a person who knows those things, right? Like, again, we can help connect you to fabricators. So let's say you wanted to build, I love trees again. So I'm like, if you want to do a tree sculpture, trees are so easy for every one of these workshops. You're probably going to hear me talk about trees in every episode. But yeah, if you got commissioned to do something with trees and you're doing a tree sculpture and you were like, oh, I want this tree sculpture to be concrete, but it's an area that's prone to flooding, and so that's going to be porous and it's going to look nasty when stuff gets all up in there or something like that. Who knows? Then
Kids and maybe doing something soft.
yeah. If it was at a playground, you wouldn't want to, say like, I'm gonna make a marble statue at this playground for kids to smack their heads on. You would want to, maybe think of something else and pitch. Or this is a time to do research and see what is out there that's a soft, harder material, and getting a chance to do that. And we are here to help you find those things. And again, it's about telling us what you need, asking questions so that we can kind of figure that out.
And I'll say one more thing about materials that you may want to think about, because again, I want you all to start thinking about how to package yourself. How can you stand out? How can you make yourself look like, oh yeah, they're thinking. So like, it made me think of when I turned around, I saw Farrell Calhoun, because I didn't remember what I had on this list. I used Farrell Calhoun because obviously Farrell Calhoun is a Memphis-based company. So sometimes you may want to think about your materials and how can you maybe source them locally. And that locally could be from that neighborhood. That's going to really make a difference. If you're able to say, well, I want to source my paint from this local hardware store that's been here since 1976, well, then that's going to set you apart from maybe somebody else who's not thinking about that. And Farrell Calhoun, I use Farrell Calhoun because it's Memphis-based. You may want to talk to some of those companies. I've had sponsorships, many sponsorships, just from saying, hey, I'm doing this project, I got this thing, it's gonna be big. I want to use your company. You give me some clothes to wear, I can wear your hat, whatever. Give me a deal on the materials. Now you're getting more in your pocket because you're not spending on material costs. These are things to think about.
So if you're thinking about your materials, chances are you've gone on Amazon, you've gone on Google to see, what does it cost for a pound of this? What is this retail for? Where can I find it? And you've probably seen some numbers next to those things. And that's how you start to form your budget. So if you are dead set on using some special corn that can only be found in South America and flown in twice a year, you'll have to put that on your timeline and you'll have to factor that into your budget. So a budget is just the resources used in the creation, my bad. That is the wrong definition for that. We know what a budget is, right? It's it's an itemized list of what you're using and how much it costs, and then adding it up to see your total and flushing that out and seeing does that add up to the money that's allocated for this project. So I just want to say something that we talked about in the last session. Was being very transparent around the creation of community-based public art in the sense that UAC works and creates works here in Memphis. The budget itself, from my thought process that helps me when I'm looking at these calls and talking to artists, this budget is not something that you should think about as money that's being paid to you. If you think about it from the standpoint that this project itself has been paid out $50,000, $90,000, $100,000, I think it will help in the context of planning out the budget and making sure to pay yourself, allocate money to yourself, your artist fee for what you're doing, and then remembering that everything else is going to your materials, to if you will have to do a community-based aspect of the project. So lots of different ways to do that, but just engaging with the neighborhood itself. So whether that's kids coming to paint with you because you got a mural going, or community surveys happening, or you joining in an existing neighborhood meeting that's happening, there will be ways that you will have to incorporate the neighborhood voice into your project. and you might have to print something out, or you want to do something fun, and so those funds come out of your project as well. If you wanted to host a community dinner with people, that money comes out of your budget. And so again, once you've been given a budget, that is your budget. Chances are it will not change or move. Luckily for you, it will not get smaller, but it probably also will not get bigger unless there was some huge contingency that UAC was able to help with. But again, contingency is the word because you will factor that into your budget as well. Contingency is just the fancy word for oh shit money, and it's basically just factoring in. You're gonna want to put 10 to 20% of your budget into a contingency little savings folder for when shit goes wrong, because sometimes it does. At least one time it will, I'll just go ahead and say it, at least one time. Something that you thought would be how it's gonna go is not how it goes.
And I'll say this too, a couple of things about, I'm sorry, did you?
No, yeah, you're good.
I'll say this, there's a couple of things I want y'all to think about in the budget. First of all, I want you to think about doing budgets before you apply, right? So a lot of times you see projects and it may say $60,000, $75,000, and you're getting a little hot and bothered because you're saying it's money. You're like, I know I can do this for you. You need to stop and you need to get a piece of paper and you need to really think about what it will cost you. I was told when I did the Westwood project and I gave them my design, I was told that my design was very ambitious for the amount of money that project paid. I think it was a $60,000 budget. At the time, I had not done a single mural for that amount of money. So I'm like, $60,000? I got it, trust me. But when you really get into it and you start looking at the cost of materials, the cost of paint, the cost of priming, the cost of having to buy a generator, the cost of having to pay people to help you. And then you start thinking about, well, so one specific thing that happened to me in this mural, say your mural is a large mural, and say you're talking about time, right? Time is a big factor when you're talking about budgets. So say you can't complete that outdoor mural in that one season. I started Westwood last year. I didn't paint during the winter time because Memphis, weather is crazy. So I'm not painting in the winter time outside. You can't paint outside below 50 degrees. So I had to wait and then start again. Well, that costs you more money. And so you need to factor that stuff in.
You had to get the wall resurfaced.
I had to get the wall resurfaced.
We covered
So it's a lot of things that you have to really think about. It's not just paint on walls. And that's why when you're writing down your resume and they're asking for this information and they're trying to ask you, one thing you'll see when you're doing a UAC project, they'll say, well, what are your budgets? What were your budgets when you're listing your portfolio pieces? They're going to ask you what your budget. It's not to alienate you and say, well, you're not a certain caliber. It's just to showcase what is your experience level with managing a large budget. So think about those things truly, because what looks like it may pay out the most may not be the most that gets in your pocket. It may just be you managing more. I've made way more money on smaller projects than I'm gonna make on Westwood. Honestly, by the time I'm done with Westwood and the stress level, I probably break even. Another thing too, if you have not done a project with UAC as a muralist or you're not just selling a piece, you do have to carry insurance. You have to have insurance, and they're going to tell you what the insurance policy has to look like, and you need to make sure that you research that and how much that's going to go. That's going to cost you at least a few $100s, maybe $300 to $400 for the year. So things like that.
Most people pull that out of their budget.
Most people pull it out of their budget. Yeah.
Themselves.
Thinking about the contingency budget, right? Mm-hmm. So when I took the project, and this is a good point I'm glad you asked this question, because these are things that I want y'all to think about when you're taking a project. So this particular project that I took, there was already a mural on this wall that had been there for 20 years. So they said, well, we're going to pressure wash. At first it started out with, we're going to sandblast, then it turned into pressure wash. We're going to pressure wash the wall, and then you'll start off new. Well, we didn't really think about the pressure washing knocked the concrete off the wall. Like it was like craters in the concrete. It's already hard enough to paint on concrete, but now you have big holes in the concrete. So I had to pay somebody to come in and fill the concrete. Now, luckily, I was able to work with UAC where they were able to help me with some of that cost. But then I had to prime it. And I'm priming from straight brand new concrete and filler. So a whole bunch of gallons of primer.
Yeah.
And now,
Concrete is so
it's just, it can be very, very expensive when you get into it. I've spent thousands of dollars on painting already on that project, and I'll spend thousands of dollars more because we're talking, like I said, 500-foot mural. It's big, and then like if you're painting on concrete versus if you're painting on a canvas or if you're painting on something else, like certain things are more porous than others and more absorbing than others. So just really think about your budget, because what they don't like to see is you not think about it and have to come back later and say, I'm running out of money.
So this is just another budget example. This is from our artist Kongwi Pang, who completed this sequin mural over under the I-40 underpass downtown in the Pinch District area. It's really cool if you haven't seen it. It lights. It's like one of my favorite pieces here. It happened. I got to paint part of the column. That was my first public art project to help with. So. Yes, no, it was very exciting. It was very exciting.
It's really my work.
Right, this is actually me. I did it. No, I love Kongwi, and so definitely was happy to be a part of that project with them. And so this is just a quick way to showcase your budget again. It's just going to be a listing of what you're doing, what it's covering, and yeah, very summarized here. So again, you can get into more detail if you want to. You can also keep it a little bit more vague to kind of help yourself out there, but people get it. If they have questions, they will ask. Again, what Tony was talking about earlier was great. I forgot to mention the PAOC committee, which exists here. It's the Public Art Oversight Committee. All of their meetings and things are recorded online and open for the public to access and listen to. It is just basically our oversight committee. They watch our projects. They help us with information and foresight, insight, whatever. It's people appointed from different organizations across the city, arts organizations, and artists. And who else is on there?
Architects.
Yeah,
engineers,
architects, engineers.
Lawyers, I think, maybe.
And some city people too.
Yeah.
So it's interesting always. I think it's a great, this process itself is just great in general, because even if you do apply, if you don't end up with the project itself, your stuff is out there. People are seeing you, people are seeing your stuff, people from different organizations, museums and things are seeing your work. So it is great for exposure. And that's also why if you get to the proposal phase, we give an honorarium for that because of the work that you put into these proposals.
Say that again, Gabrielle, because that's a good point that I want everyone in the room to know.
Yeah,
that
so
I don't know that they're familiar with. Go ahead.
In session 2, we covered requests for qualifications. So an RFQ, if you see that listed, it's just qualifications. You don't have to put a proposal together, and so therefore it's not that much work, and so we don't pay for those. But if you make it from that round into the request for proposals, the RFP, which is what we're talking about today, we do pay for that at the end for your work, your time. The honorarium is normally $500 for the artist, but if the budget is larger, it could be a little bit more.
One thing that may be jarring for you in this piece of the proposal when you're doing your budget, you may end up in a position where you may have to disclose how much you're paying yourself. And that can be jarring for somebody who's not used to getting paid for your work. You deserve to get paid for your work. This is a skill set. Art is highly skilled activity. This is not something everybody can do. So you deserve to get paid, and you deserve to get paid a living wage. You deserve to get paid well. And even though, like Gabrielle was saying, you shouldn't think of it as my money, because this is the project is paid for, and you're getting paid out of that. Don't feel like you can't look at this budget and actually pay yourself. You should be able to pay yourself in the budget. And in fact, if you're not paying yourself in the budget, then that's a problem. If you know that you can't work on anything else for 2 months because you have to do this project and you're not getting paid enough to pay your bills, it's not worth it for you, and you need to bow out before you even get to this phase. Y'all understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think also, to that point, the honorarium itself comes out of that budget.
Oh,
So
yeah.
let's say this Kongwe piece, the budget was $50,000, and we always choose 3 finalists. So think about that as 3 people. That's $1,500 out of that total budget that you would see. So that's again why I say that that money is not being paid to you. So generously compensate yourself for your time, for your work, for your energy within that project budget, and think about that. So I would say, like, if you make like $25 an hour, or whatever it is that you do, or whatever it is, the timeline, what you need covered for yourself or whatever, use those things to determine how much you want to pay yourself. There's also lots of free stuff online, like calculators, little tool calculators and things where you can put in and see how much you would like to pay yourself.
Yes, and I'll also say this too, and I don't know that we outlined this part. But I do want y'all to also know that when UAC is paying out, doing payments on these projects, they are in drops. And so you're not getting paid if your budget is $50,000 and you are awarded the mural project or whatever the project is, they're not going to write you a check for $50,000 and then just say, let us know when you're done. They're going to have benchmarks and milestones that you have to meet in order to get paid a certain number, a certain percentage, and they'll have all that laid out before you even start the project. And so that's very important for you to kind of know, so that you can pace yourself. Like, when you get to this phase, you get something, you get to middle phase, you get something. They also do one thing I really love about UAC, and I can speak to the fact that a lot of other cities aren't as organized and don't have this set up, but UAC does a signing. Part of your job is just for signing your contract. So all right. Yeah, you get a little signing bonus, like you done made it to the NBA. But you get paid for doing the concept, doing the proposal. You get paid for signing. Then you get paid before you start. Then you get paid when you get to the middle. Then you get paid when you get to the end, and then you may get paid just like another thing. But at no point will you really have to, and this is a huge for us as artists. At no point should you really ever have to fund your project at all. That's a great opportunity for you as an artist. There's levels to it. So I have an LLC, and if you are somebody who, I would hope that if you're already in the space, in the mindset of like monetizing your skill set and wanting to get paid for your work, you may want to have a business account for yourself, or if not a business account, have a separate bank account for yourself. That's going to help you when it comes to, these questions there's a lot of questions we can ask around that, because like, okay, what about taxes? What you need to have, these are all things you need to think about. So, when you're talking about taxes and you're talking about managing your money and your budget, having a separate bank account definitely helps, so that you can see where the money's going, you can see what you spent, you can pull all your receipts and all your bank statements, and it's very clear. And that's what I do. I run it through a business account so that I know where the money's going and how much I've spent. Really think about your project and what you're going to be doing in that space, especially if you're working outside. Part of my budget for Westwood has been security. Some of the security I've paid some people to be out there with me, because I have my back to the street and I'm outside all the time, and sometimes I'm at night. So really be intentional about that budget and think about things like that. If you're somebody of a certain demographic that doesn't want to be by yourself in a certain place, think about what your needs will be to feel comfortable in that place. You understand what I'm saying?
Or even with I'm pointing at it, but for Kongwe's sequin mural, that area has a lot of people experiencing homelessness.
Yes,
and so
and they're gonna come up to you.
There was a lot of there was a fence that we were trying to get cut for so long that the city finally came out and cut the fence, and it was a whole big thing. Yeah. And as soon as that happened and got down, a bunch of people went to sleep in that space, and so she still couldn't access what she needed to access. Yeah. And so it was just a different thing, and we, at this time, it was also the pandemic, so we had to figure out, but people went with her. So there's different ways. It doesn't necessarily, Tony, in this case, was able to pay for and hire security, but depending on where you are, what you're doing, that may not be necessary. And then also, we had thought about throwing you some block parties so that we could be out there while he was painting.
She
and
tried
stuff.
so hard. She was like,
yes,
let's
we were
do
trying
a-
to get the
we're
street
gonna get a
blocked,
grill.
and we was
I'm
like, people
girl,
are gonna
I don't want y'all
come
women
out.
out there by yourself with me.
We're talking earlier. I had my mural got tagged, and so in the middle of what I'm doing, which is highly irregular, it does not happen often at all. But I had to repaint some stuff.
So again, your timeline. We didn't. There's. You can see this slide is pretty empty because a timeline just is. It's a thing that happens and then it happens again. So you can start off. I think it's very good to include a timeline in your application process because it just shows that you're thinking about that, even if it was just quarterly, like in the spring, in the summer, in the fall, we're hitting these marks type of thing. But if you are able to consider these things around your own existing personal schedule, I think that is really important too. So scheduling is for us, but also for you to understand where you're going within this, because we do have loose timelines around most of the projects, just an ideal sense of when someone wants something finished, but then we go from there. So again, creating something that works for you based off what you've designed or proposed and thinking about, okay, I know that this thing that I've chosen is going to take me a year to do, versus life happening. So it might end up a year and a half, but you've planned out and you've thought about it. And I think that's the most important part. I would like to say thank you so much for attending today's workshop, session 3.